Hi friends, another week and we are back with another Ask a Question series video from dataplatformcenter.com. So in this Ask a Question series, we are going to look into a old trick which helps us to do cross highlighting across visuals inside a Power BI report. In one of the recent questions which was asked by a fellow developer in one of the forums, the requirement was to cross highlight a visual based on a selection done on another visual. So the question is how we can implement such a feature inside Power BI. It's an age old trick, but since there are a lot of people who still doesn't know how to implement this, I thought we'll make it into a video. So in this video we are going to take a quick illustration on how we can get this implemented. So for this illustration we are going to take a scenario where we have a bar chart and we also have a scatter chart, and the requirement is based on the bar selected by the user from the bar chart visual, automatically the scatter chart will get auto highlighted. So the points which corresponds to the selected bar chart will be highlighted in the scatter chart. It's very easy to implement by using a legend concept. So let's quickly go and see how we can implement such a cross filtering requirement between visuals inside a Power BI report. This question was raised by a user called Suresh Ram in one of the forums, and the given illustration is what I provided as solution for the question. So let's quickly go and see the illustration in action. To start off the illustration, let's consider this Power BI desktop file which I have connected to one of my local instances, which consists of a sample database called ABC Bytes, and we have different tables available inside that, like brands, categories, products, then order items, etc. This is one of the popular scenario that we have taken in some of our previous exercises as well. So here we are going to see how we can implement this cross highlighting functionality between two visuals. So for this illustration we will be first adding a bar chart, and then we will also add a scatter chart, and we are going to cross highlight the scatter chart based on the selection of the values from our bar chart. So let's first start off with the default way. So if you go to the model looks like this. We have sales orders and order items as the facts, and it is connected to lots of dimensions like stores, products, brands, categories, etc. So now let's start off by adding a bar chart. So we are adding a bar chart here, and we are going to add the brand name as the category, and we are going to show the revenue for each of those brands. So let's go to the order items, and we have created that measure called revenue, which is nothing but list price into quantity minus discount. So we are going to use this measure and plot it inside our bar chart. As you see, the bar chart now shows the revenue for different brands which is available inside our model. Now what we need to do is we need to add a scatter chart. So let's add a scatter chart now, and we are going to add both these measures, the average revenue and also the revenue. So let's add revenue to y-axis, the average revenue to x-axis, and again the brand name to the values. So as you see, there are different points inside our scatter chart. Each point represents a particular brand. If you hover over that, you will see the details of the brand. Now the requirement for us is to make sure that we highlight the points inside that based on the selection that we are doing from our bar chart. Now if you select something, the default functionality is that it will cross filter the scatter chart. So if you get only the points which is corresponding to the selected brand. So if you are selecting multiples, you will get only those 2 points inside. But this is not what we want. What we want is to override this default functionality and make sure that we are adding a highlighting functionality. So for this purpose, what we need to do is that instead of going for the default functionality, we need to add a DAX measure through which we can effectively display both the highlighted values and the non-highlighted, that is the selected and the non-selected values. So let's see how we can do that. To start off, the first step would be to add a disconnected brand table, because what we are doing here is effectively same as adding a slicer and then trying to highlight the points based on the value that they are selecting from the slicer. So here in place of slicer we have another visual which is used effectively as a slicer for our scatter chart. So let's just delete these two things. And now let's start fresh. So the first thing that we need to add is that we need to add a new table. So let's go to the model, go to the model view, and there is something known as the new table option here. So we are going to add a new table called brand slicer, and this is the disconnected table that we will be using for creating our new bar chart visual, which will act as a slicer. So here this will be consisting of the same values which is coming from our brand table, but we are creating this as a disconnected table because this is going to act as a slicer. So now we have created that, and also we have also created a generic table which is a selected brand table. Here I will be just adding two values inside that. This is just to distinguish between the selected values and the unselected values. So for this purpose we will just add a common table which is just going to have two values. One is yes, another one is no. And once we use this as a legend, you can see how the values will be distinguished as selected values and unselected values. So basically, when you think of highlighting a set of points inside scatter chart, effectively what we are going to do is like we are going to add this generic table called selected brand, which consists of just two values, yes and no, and we are going to use this as a legend, so that all the yes will come in one color, all the no will come in another color, which will give us the highlighting functionality effectively. So we have added the table as well. It's a simple statement. We are just using a union and we are just hard coding two values, yes and no. So now we have added the slicer table and also the generic table, which is going to provide us with the highlighting functionality. So let's now start again with a bar chart, and this time we are going to add the slicer table brand name as the axis. And now we need to have a values for a measure. We need to have a measure for adding the values as well. So this time the measure has to come from the brand slicer table itself, because this table is disconnected from our original tables. So what we are going to do is we are going to add a measure also inside that, and we are going to name it like selected value or maybe selected brand value. So let's name it selected brand value. So here what we need to do is like we need to return only the revenue corresponding to the selected value. So what we are going to do is we are going to select the revenue column, which is already the measure that we have already added inside sales order items, but we need to do it only for those which are matching with our slicer. So here what we need to do is like we need to return the revenue from the table where the original brand name, if you see this sales order items table is not related to brand slicer, but it is related to product brands. So what we are going to do is like we are going to use product brands of brand name. So values of product brands of brand name. So this will relate this measure to the dimension, which is the brand dimension, the original brand dimension. And then what we need to do is like we need to get an intersect of this. So that means all the values which are coming from the original set of brand and which matches the set of values that we select from our slicer. We need to get the revenue for all of them. So once you do this, what is going to happen is that whatever brands we are selecting through the slicer, which is our visual, corresponding to that values, it will go to the brand name, the original brand name table, and through that it will now filter the revenue. So you get the revenues as per the values that you are having inside your slicer. In this case the slicer itself is a visual. So now if you try to use this measure inside the values and also the brand name, you will get the same way as if you used the actual brand name values from the main table and the sales order items. We are doing this because we can't use that tables for this visual, because this is going to act as a slicer for the main scatter chart. If you are using the same table for both the scatter chart and the bar chart, then the default functionality will apply, which is the cross filter functionality. We need to override it and do a cross highlighting, not a cross filter. So we created a separate table, and through that table we did a comparison with the original table, and using that comparison, whatever values matched that comparison, those values we related to the main measure table to get the value of the measure. So now that the first part is done, now let's go to the second part. So for the second part, now we need to add a new measure. There are a couple of new measures. One is the selected revenue measure, and second one would be the average revenue measure. So we need to modify this measure so as to be based on the selected revenue measure. So here if you see, this is only taking from the main table. Instead of this measure, we have to add a new measure which will selectively take the value from this table or from this table, depending on whether it is the brand is one among your selected value or an unselected value. So let's see how we can do that. So we are going to add this new measure and I'm going to name it selected revenue. And what I'm going to do here is like I'm going to do a SUMX, which is going to iterate through a table. So here the table that we want to iterate through is the flag table, the table which contains the flag, which is your selected brand table, selected brand of flag. So what this will do is like it will iterate for every value inside the flag. So we have only two values here, yes and no. So for yes and no, it will perform the operation, the expression that we are going to write. So what is the expression that we should write here? We should check what is the current value of this flag. That means for each of the row context, and based on the flag value, if it is yes, we need to show it from this table, this measure, or if it is no, we need to show the original measure. So let's do that. So how we can do that? You need to have a conditional statement. So we need to use switch and we need to have expression value. So what is the expression here? The expression would be the selected value of the flag. So that is whether the flag is yes or whether the flag is no. Okay, and if it is yes, we are going to get the value from selected brand value. If no, we are going to get it from the revenue. So now we have added the selected revenue. And the second thing is we need to go to average revenue, and instead of directly using the revenue here, we are going to use the selected revenue because it is conditional now depending on what you select from this slice. So now the setup is done. So again, we are going to use the slicer table for creating the bar chart, and based on the selection, you are going to set a selected brand value here, which is going to calculate the revenue based on the values that you have selected inside this. And then you have a flag table which you have added, which will just give you yes and no, and for each of these we are going to iterate through, and we are going to see for yes what all values are having yes, you will go and fetch the value from this table, and for whatever values it's no, we will get it from the main table. So now let's see how we can do this. So we'll start the scatter chart. We will add selected revenue as the y-axis, average revenue as the x-axis, and for the values you need to add the original brand, and for the legend you can add this flag. So now the setup is ready. Now if you see, you can see that no and yes. As of now everything is yes because everything is selected. Now if you select any one of this, say Surly, you can see that only Surly turns, this is Surly, this is highlighted. All the others are become lighter. This has become bold, which means that this is the highlighted value. So it's exactly working like you want. If you select anything else, say Strider, only the Strider will get highlighted. So this is exactly the feature that you wanted. So you achieved it by creating a separate disconnected table, created a visual based on it, and then we created a conditionally based measure which will determine current value of the flag field, which is set based on your selection. And whenever the flag is yes, it will show it in bold, and whenever the flag is no, it will show it in the normal way. That is achieved by means of this legend which you are using. So this is how you can implement such a functionality where a particular visual can be cross highlighted based on the selection from another visual. Special thanks to Suresh Ram for sending out the scenario. Hope this video will come handy for all who are going to use this kind of feature in any of your project related scenarios. As usual, keep sending your feedback and let me know your comments on these useful videos. Feel free to follow my channel for getting useful tips like this every week, and make sure you press on the bell icon to get notifications on the new videos, and subscribe if you are new to this channel. Thank you all for your time. Meet you soon with another useful quick tip next week.